Welcome to LTG Live podcast and Facebook Live.
Yo, yo.
My name is Eran, and I'm the director of Lead Generation. And today, I have the honor of introducing a brand new co-host to LTG Live, my good friend, and my wife and I call her our spiritual daughter, which works well with the topic today. But Diamond DeYampert, how are you, Diamond? Good to see you.
Hello. I am doing great. Thank you so much for letting me jump in and replace my brother. He's not my biological brother. I feel like I have to say that, but he's like a brother to me, Peter Reeves. If you happen to be out there and watching, I replaced you. Sorry, you're fired.
Hey, don't tell Peter I said this, Diamond, but I feel like we got an upgrade today on the co-hosting side. So yeah, Peter will be with us next week. He is in North Texas preaching a youth camp this week. And so shout out to all of our friends down there that are listening to Peter minister, I'm sure, in an amazing way. And it's just exciting to see him doing what he's so good at doing, gifted at doing. So Peter, we'll miss you.
We love you, Peter. We miss you. I love you, North Texas. I used to live in that district. You're wonderful people. Peter, we miss you. But like I said, you're fired now. So
yeah, you're good. So for those of you that are watching right now, welcome to LTG Live. We are so glad you're with us. This is a ministry, a part of the ministry of leadthegeneration.com. And we train and inspire youth pastors and youth leaders and student leaders. And so if you're watching right now, we're glad you're with us. Give us a shout out in the comments. We want to know who you are. We want to know where you're watching from. We want to welcome you. And I'll just say this. I'm looking on my phone right now. One of my spiritual fathers is actually watching the broadcast right now, Stan Williams. And so shout out to my good friend and just a great mentor in my life. My dad's best friend, actually, but a spiritual father to me. And so Stan, thanks for watching. Yeah. And man, those of you that are watching, we want to see you. We want to know who you are, and we want to invite you to engage in the conversation. Don't just listen in, but make comments, ask questions. It's going to be a great topic today. And if you are not familiar with who we are, but you just jumped on today, Lead the Generation, go to our Facebook page, give us a like, give us a share the broadcast today, help us spread the word, and we appreciate it. So, Diamond, great to have you co-hosting with us today. On a topic that I know you're passionate about as well, right? Spiritual fathering, spiritual parenting in youth ministry. And we started this topic last week. But before we jump in real quick, just give everyone an update. What are you doing in your life right now? We obviously know that you're out of Detroit because we see it in your Instagram feed there, your Instagram handle. Yeah. But give everyone a quick update. You've been a part of every Lead the Generation conference, but you played a bigger role in Lead the Generation than most people realize.
I have, and it's been fun every step of the way over these last several years to be part of not just the conference, but the organization and everything we're doing. So if you're out there and you're a student pastor, we love you. You mean the world to us. We're here for you. Currently, I am in Detroit. If you're watching this, you know that I've lived in a few different places.
Yeah.
I have actually left my hometown, Detroit, 3 times and come back 3 times.
It keeps pulling you back.
It keeps pulling me back. It keeps pulling me back in. And I really this time feel like I was responding to the voice of the Lord saying, hey, I'm calling your number. I'm calling your number. You've had the opportunity to be under incredible leadership. You and Julie is a great example. The people that gave me my very first full-time job in ministry. And I think what the Lord is trying to do with me now, and it's been incredible. I mean, some of it I can't even share about because it's in its infancy, but the Lord is doing something very special in the neighborhood that my parents pastored in for 30 years. Wow. And I believe he's given me the opportunity to continue that work in Southwest Detroit. And so being home has been incredible. I work in finance. I believe in the co-vocational model of ministry. I know that's not for everybody, but if you're out there and you maybe have a marketplace job and you have the call to ministry on your life and you're trying to wrestle with the duality, I'm in the trenches with you. And I believe that there is a balance that we can rock. And there can be a stride in the life of an essential, effective minister who doesn't necessarily leave their 9 to 5. So I have an incredible job, and I'm also in the process of being assessed as a church planter in Southwest Detroit. So it's all good. It's all good.
That's awesome.
I didn't even tell you that, but
I know. I just found that out right now. I mean, I'm not surprised because we've known each other for years, and you have often said to me, one day I will plant a church in Detroit. So this is exciting. Very, very exciting. So well, we are picking up on part 2 of a conversation, Diamond, we started last week that we entitled Spiritual Fathering in Youth Ministry. And we decided, since we're doing part 2, we want to invite 2 guests to join us today. So we want to invite back to the podcast Pastor Joey Silva, who is a youth pastor at Belmont Assembly of God in the Chicago area, or I shouldn't say area, in Chicago. He wanted me to be very clear about that. So Pastor Joey, welcome back. We're glad to have you with us again.
Hey.
Good to see you again. Yeah.
Hey guys.
I got it right this time. You're in Chicago. You're in, okay.
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
And boy, we had a great conversation with you last week. A lot of great questions and great interaction on the comments and in Facebook. And if you're a youth pastor watching right now, or you're a lead pastor, it's going to be a great topic. Do us a favor, hit the like button, click on the share button, and help us spread the word, because we've invited another guest to join us today as well. And Diamond, I'm going to give you the honor of introducing him, because I know that you have a great connection with this guest.
Yes, this means so much to me. But we have an incredible guest on with us. When I began answering the call of ministry on my life, I chose to go to North Central University, and I was a pastoral studies student. And the chair of the department, who also had a daughter as a freshman, who is one of my dearest friends to this day, has become like a spiritual father to me. So it is so appropriate, so divine that we have Jeff Grenell joining us, president and founder of Youthology, also the next gen specialist at North Central University in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where, if you are aware of current events right now, Minneapolis, Minnesota has been through an incredible amount of division and of challenges over the past couple of weeks. And so I think it is for a time as this that we have someone like Jeff Grenell contributing to that ministry landscape. So I know he's going to be jumping on with us, and I am so excited, because I'm sure that in the ministry that he's doing right now, he has the opportunity to not just be a physical father to his beautiful 3 kids, but to also be an incredible father to so many youth pastors and so many students who are ready to move forward in their life, who maybe don't have a dad at home. So,
Jeff, welcome. We are glad you're with us. Good to see you, my brother.
And you guys too. Dee, thanks for the intro. It's been too long. We have to connect again, maybe later this week.
Yeah, we do.
So good. Well, this is going to be a great conversation. And, I'm looking at the screen, and I'm seeing 4 people that all have a lot to say about a very important topic.
Yes.
And 4 people that are all very good at talking. So I'm gonna do my best to put my just host hat on and allow the experts, Jeff and Joey, to really speak to this topic here. And Jeff, I wanna start with you in this conversation. Joey shared some incredible things last week. I know you were watching, and you were sharing some great things through comments as well. But I want to start with you, for those who are watching now who maybe aren't incredibly familiar with your background in youth ministry and your experience in youth ministry. Tell us a little bit about your background in youth ministry. Kind of just set the context for us briefly before we jump real specifically into the conversation about spiritual fathering.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Thanks for this opportunity. I've been looking forward to this since we chatted during the session last week.
I was texting you during our broadcast last week. Hey, Jeff, you should be our guest next week.
That's so good.
I know. And have great respect for you and what you guys are doing there. I know one of my, when we talk about this, mentoring and fathering and mothering and all of that, one of my favorite people in the world was Taylor Murphy, and you had him for a while. Both of you and Dee had him for a while.
Yes.
Yep.
And you guys know Alan Griffin.
Yes.
Youth ministry, and
yes.
He's such a close friend to you guys too. I don't know how many times he's been to the Poconos.
Oh yeah, he was just here last week.
He was coming like every other month when I was still living up on the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's actually in Minneapolis today, and we're doing dinner tonight.
Tell him I said hi.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Reggie Dabbs is here too, so we're all.
Oh, that's awesome.
So thank you. And then Joey, man, it's been a couple of summers that we were able to be together, but I followed what you do too, man, in Chicago, and have great respect for you. I love the diversity of youth ministry in our country, and sometimes we don't see that. Yeah. We really don't. And I know, Dee, hopefully you'll speak to you and Joey both will speak to some of that, throughout this podcast, because I know Eran will kind of let this thing just organically develop.
Sure.
Yeah.
But coming out of Minneapolis, like you said, right now is a movement. It really is. And one of my close friends, Chauncey Hollingsworth and Tara.
Oh my God, they are doing incredible work right there on the ground out of Sanctuary. Amazing people.
I don't think people realize, Chauncey, he runs Hoops in Christ now. Yeah. Which is a professional. Actually, he trains everyone from elementary kids all the way to professional basketball players.
Yes, he does.
Wow.
He's a rising star in that field. Mm-hmm. But he came out of St. Louis, out of Jason Tatum. So some names, right? He came out of St. Louis, came to North Central, and God transformed his life there. And he has done an incredible job of leading the movement of reconciliation in Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. So I know many people who look to him and Tara and how they're leading right now as key voices. Yeah. Not just in Minneapolis, but in this all the racial tensions, I call them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I love watching what they're doing, and I actually was texting this morning, DMing them this morning. So just through social media and what they're doing and watching that. So just a shout out to them. I think oftentimes when it comes to youth ministry, this is my 36th year in youth ministry.
Wow.
But I play different
Come on,
roles. Man. We can talk about longevity here if we want. And reinventing yourself a little bit, and how to stay current or whatever that language is. But we play different roles. I did what Joey's doing right now for 19 years in the local church. And then for 12 years, I've been doing university education in the classroom. And then for 6 years now, I've been doing this youthology coaching. And, it's education, resourcing, events, a lot of what, some of the resourcing and stuff that you're doing, Eran. If you go to youthology.com, maybe we can put it up there. We have so many resources there, from our YouTube to our iTunes, and everything is manuscript also. So every time we do something, we put it in the blog. I have a 13-year blog there.
Wow.
Posts.
I
tell leaders all the time, man, if you don't find a post on the topic you're looking for, in 1 week, I'll have it up. That's my commitment to them, because we've covered, you name it, man. So right now, that's what I'm doing. I happen to be in Minneapolis. I've been here for 16 years now, doing both the youthology / the university stuff with North Central. So that's kind of a look at, Dee mentioned I have 3 kids, 4 grandkids. 2 of my kids are on staff in youth ministry at Zoe Church in LA and Hillsong in New York City. And then my 3rd one just finished at Hillsong in Sydney at their leadership college, and just moved to LA, and he's working with the Hillsong LA church there. So all the kids are in ministry and having a blast. Finally, probably the biggest development in my life, everyone that knows me, my wife passed away 4 years ago, and had a, shaped, those of you that are married, sorry, Dee, had a huge impact on the ministry. And now I'm kind of doing this solo. So that's my life right now.
Wow. Well, Jeff, we're excited to have someone with, decades of youth ministry experience to help us navigate this topic of spiritual fathering and youth ministry. For those of you that maybe have just joined the conversation and you are watching right now on Facebook, we're talking today with Jeff Grenell and Joey Silva on spiritual fathering and youth ministry. If you're listening later on or watching later on, whether it's on a podcast or a YouTube channel or a Facebook page, we welcome you to the conversation now. Joey, you and I were talking just a couple minutes before we hit the go live button. We were having a conversation about how, as a youth pastor, the moment you take on the mantle of becoming a spiritual father, it's a game changer. And quite frankly, it might be one of the most significant philosophical changes that takes place in the way that you do youth ministry when you take on this mantle, right? And you made a couple interesting comments to me, so I want you to just go ahead and share, a little bit about what we were talking about, and then Jeff, on the heels of that, feel free to jump in on this same, I guess, question or topic I'm bringing up, like the shift that takes place in the thinking or the planning or the strategy of a youth pastor the moment they decide I'm going to be a spiritual father. But Joey, go ahead, take that and run with it real quick.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, especially early on in youth ministry, and particularly maybe the younger you are, there's a temptation to be a friend. There's a temptation to come up with cool events and impress them. And you can very easily become an event planner. You can very easily become someone who just produces content. And I think the shift happens when you start to see these as your spiritual children, because there's a different responsibility. I have a different responsibility for my daughter than any other child on this planet. I love other kids. I would protect them if I saw anything happening, but there's just a different approach with my daughter. Like, Jeff can do what he wants to do with his kids, and I'd be like, hey, listen, agree, disagree. Those are your children. This is my daughter. And so, it's like, oh, she can date whenever she wants. No, my daughter will be 37 before her first date, that kind of thing. And so I think with youth ministry, when you start to love them like spiritual children, like they're your own babies to a certain extent, there's a different approach. There's an actual person behind the ministry. These aren't numbers anymore. It's not this, hey, we had 500 kids. It's no, we had Jeff and Diamond and Eran, and you start to know them. And again, I think that's the heart of the Lord, right? He knows your name. He knows the hairs on your head, or at least some of Aaron's. Like, he knows.
I'm just trying to make his job easier. You guys are making him work too hard.
Yeah,
I'm making him work real hard over here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Diamond, you're making him work.
but look at, like, when, especially like Jeff mentioned, longevity, it can be easy over the years for them to become nameless faces, for people to just come in and out of your ministry, and again, with the pressures of numbers and stats and all that stuff, you can easily focus on the number of your group instead of the student and the individual. And I think when you start to take on that spiritual fatherhood with them, it just changes your approach. It changes your heart for things. I love when my kids will look at me and go, how did you know that? I'll say, hey, how's this situation going? How's your mom feeling? Well, how did you know? I didn't even tell you that. It's like, no, but I'm your pastor. I know these things. And so a lot of times they'll tell our leaders, like, how did Pastor Joey know that? And they'll just laugh. They're like, because he's your pastor. He wants to know these things.
He's dad.
And so I think, yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of stuff, too, I'm sure, with you and Julie, where your daughters will be like, how did dad know? Well, mom told them. And how did mom know? We're talking to each other. And when I get with my team, we're talking about our kids. Hey, how's so-and-so doing? What's going on in this kid's life? Hey, can you do me a favor? Could you follow up with that? And just let me know what's happening. Because there's sometimes, I might be in a situation with the young lady where I'd approach Diamond and say, hey, Diamond, can you help her walk through this season right now? It's not appropriate maybe for me to do it in this moment. I don't really want to talk about her sexual fantasies and lust issues that she's having. And maybe that's not safe for me to do. Could you do it? And just keep me in the loop on how she's doing. Yeah. And so this is the part where, we're parenting, and we're co-parenting, really, because the other people involved in this ministry want to become spiritual parents too.
Yeah.
So I think we have to take that shift and make sure that we're understanding that these aren't nameless people. These are your children that God has entrusted you to help raise up.
So good. So good. Jeff, same kind of direction or topic for you. Talk about that shift that takes place in the life or the growth of a youth pastor when they take on the mantle of spiritual fathering.
Yeah, this is a great place to start, because it really gets at the theoretical part of it. You know, I know Joey mentioned some practical things there, and I'm sure we can get into that. I've got a bunch here, you know, on how to do it. But theoretically, I think this is what we do. Yeah. We are to make disciples. You know, so many people talk about different philosophical methods of youth ministry. Okay, such as small groups, outreach, campus, evangelism, right? Worship, preaching. You know, everybody has their philosophical thing that they do. Families, you know, and this is the main method of how they do youth ministry. Okay,
right.
But rising above all of that is discipleship. We were called to be disciples. Yeah, and to make disciples. Yep. So to me, if and mentoring has come a long way, man. Yeah. Fathering, mothering, you know, as we're saying here. I mean, it used to be called discipleship, and then we tried to get cool with it, and we called it, you know, coaching or apprenticeships or shadowing,
residency.
You know, there's all these names that we've come up with to try to. But to be honest, the wheel's still the wheel. And I think sometimes we forget, like you said, Joey, we always try to create something else, to do something new. If I was a youth pastor in the local church today, I wouldn't do anything different than I did 36 years ago. I'm telling you that. I answer that question all the time. People say, I just wrote a book on the future of youth ministry, the whole 2 full chapters on the future of youth ministry, and included almost everything there's some new things, you know, that should be emphasized, but I think sometimes instead of doing things different, we just need to do them better.
Yeah, that's good.
You know what I mean? And so it's with that whole mentoring, fathering, discipleship, shadowing, apprenticing, you know, rabbi thing all the way back to the first century. Instead of doing something different, let's just do stuff better. So with what Joey's saying,
and if you're going to do something better, do this better.
Right.
Like,
Yes, that's it. Because theoretically, this is our first role. Our first role, you know, I know that sometimes we can move to that. Well, small groups is where it's at. Small group, you can disciple and you can coach, and you at the larger group level too if you use good theology. You know. Sure. Right. I know there's more accountability in the smaller setting. It doesn't always mean they're doing it, because I've been in small groups that have no accountability. They're just doing small groups because they don't want to do the large group and the work it takes to do that. I've been in small groups where nobody talks except the leader. That's not accountability, right? Yeah. So it's just doing things better, you know.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, if I can jump in real quick, I just think on top of that, parenting is harder. Being a spiritual parent is harder than just running a ministry, because your hands are dirty. You know, it's again, I'm a new biological father. So I have a 6-month-old, and that's harder than when I would take care of my nieces and my nephew, you know, because I can give those back.
You can give them back. You're right. Exactly.
You know, I don't change their diaper. I don't mess with their, I'm like, hey, your kid pooped here. I can't do that with my daughter. And so I think when you take that same mindset into youth ministry, you can't just pass it off to somebody else. You can't just say, well, they're not that big a deal. Great. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to change some diapers. You got to mess with some throw up. And I was thinking about this. I remember one time I'm changing my daughter, getting ready to give her a bath. And my wife handed her to me, you know, completely naked already. And I'm like, I'm not even ready. The water's not ready. So I'm just holding her while I'm getting everything ready. And as I'm holding her, she completely pees all over me, you know, she's just complete. It's no filter. It's just all over me. And I remember I looked at her. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. I looked at her. I was like, I literally said this. It's okay, baby. I love you. And I think when you're a spiritual parent to these kids, you're less likely to get angry, to get upset, you know, you're not lashing out. You're not like, oh, why are you doing this? And then, it's okay. I still love you, and I still want to be a part of this with you. And sometimes you're going to get peed on. Sometimes you're going to get messy. But when they're yours, I think you're less likely to dismiss them, and you're more likely to embrace them.
That's powerful.
Let me bring up this thought here, and Diamond, I want you to also speak to this from from your vantage point, and obviously I know not having served as a youth pastor, but growing up in youth ministry and having multiple youth pastors. So I see, and Jeff, you probably see this a lot in your coaching, Joey, I'm sure you see this as well. I see a sometimes a very large gap between the youth pastors who have taken on mantle of spiritual fathering and those that are either stuck or content or resistant to navigate out of what I call the immature youth pastor season. And we've all been there. We've all had it. I had mine. Joey, I'm sure you had yours. Jeff, I'm sure you had yours as well. Where you want to be young, you want to be cool, you want to be relevant, you want to be well liked by students, you want to be best friend, so on and so on. And so it can be hard to navigate. What are some of the real stark differences that you see, not just in the way that those kind of leaders lead, very differently, mind you, but also in what they produce in their youth ministry, or more importantly, the type of students they produce, right? And so any of you that want to jump in on that, Diamond, I see you kind of chomping at the bit to go. I'll let you go. And then Jeff and Joey, just jump in as well from your vantage point.
I've got a thought and a follow-up question. So I'm the product of incredible youth ministries. Specifically, many of you might know Don Champion, who was on staff at River Valley Church for almost 10 years before leaving to plant Highmark in Fishers, Indiana. What you might not know is that he was the youth pastor, the student ministries pastor, and then the associate pastor at Freedom Christian Assembly of God in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And he and Jamie were my youth pastors. They threw me up on stage to lead worship after I had dropped out of high school, still wearing leggings as pants, like a hot mess. Okay. Like I'm a youth ministry nightmare. I was the last person that they probably should have been putting in any type of leadership over other students, but they took a chance on me. That's something that I see in a youth pastor that is fathering. And that's not, to your point, Joey, I loved what you said about somebody who maybe becomes a glorified event planner or somebody who's just producing content, a glorified social media manager, right? And I know that it's hard with COVID because we're really depending on the internet for us to be able to do youth ministry. But I think that where the shift is, you know, when you're parenting in a spiritual way, you're willing to take chances on your kids, with your kids, because you see a bright future for them. You're not as gripped or held back by the fear that they're going to do something wrong, or that you're going to do something wrong, because you know that inside of the relationship there is intimacy, there's trust, and you'll figure it out. And I remember when Don and Jamie caught some really serious flack from some parents in the church for letting me be a worship leader in the student ministry while I wasn't even going to school. And their response was so full of love and so full of grace, but they were really just kind of like, I mean, deal with it. But like, we love her. She's one of us. A pastor that's willing to, you know, Joe, you talked about, you know, stepping in if you see another child potentially being hurt. The type of pastor that's willing to put on the mantle of maybe spiritual mother or spiritual father is somebody who's going to step in and take a bullet, you know, is somebody who's going to step in and take some flack and have some hard conversations in the name of seeing a student discipled. And I was down at Highmark with Don and Jamie leading worship for their 1-year-old church plant. And we sat around their kitchen island nearly in tears because of what the Lord has done through their willingness to take a chance on not just me, but so many other kids in our student ministry. And I'll say one last thing. I think the mark of a student pastor, who has spiritual motherhood and spiritual fatherhood baked into the way that they lead their students, is someone who will look on to their students' lives 5, 10, 15 years after they've graduated out of the student ministry, and they still see them serving Jesus. Wow. You never really know how good of a youth pastor you were until your kid's not a youth anymore. Because I can make them and be involved in all of the programming in the world. You know, we come from within the Assemblies of God where there's a robust youth program on regional and national levels. And you can have kids going to events and making friends and having a blast literally year round, having never met Jesus, having never been changed, but just having full calendars. And you'll never really know how much of the discipleship aspect of being in a student ministry is stuck until they're not going to youth convention and fine arts and camp every quarter, and they're just having to like read their Bible and be good to their neighbors and love their spouses and be generous without being told every Wednesday night at 7 that they have to do that. And so those are kind of like the two marks for me that I see where there's a big difference between a student pastor who's maybe not, he doesn't realize he's doing it, she doesn't realize she's doing it, but they're really just an event planner. They're really just a social media manager, compared to the student pastor who is a spiritual mother, who is a spiritual father.
Yeah. So good.
You know what?
So
if I can touch, you said something that was the first thought I had when I knew Jeff was going to jump on this call, and I have so much admiration for you, Jeff. One of my goals now, I've had the privilege of being a spiritual father, but in my heart, I want to be a spiritual grandfather. And what I mean by that is, Jeff is a granddad biologically, but I think a spiritual grandfather is someone who raised up spiritual sons and daughters who are raising up spiritual sons and daughters. And then I look at Jeff and the legacy that he's left behind, and literally some of the giants that came out of his youth ministry for those first 16 years. That's, I think, the dream for every youth pastor. Not just that they would become evangelists like Micah Mack or, servants like, just all the countless youth pastors and his own biological children that are out there doing youth ministry. But like you said, they're still strong believers who are raising up their children in church and youth ministry. And there was this song, I don't even remember the title, it was an old 90s song called Remember Me. And there was this line where it says, remember me when your kids are old enough to preach, old enough to teach. Remember, and it's all this song about a Sunday school teacher saying, hey, remember me what I showed you. And so for me, at the heart of this, I don't want to just be a spiritual father. I want to become a spiritual grandfather. And I want to love on those spiritual grandbabies say, hey, your pastor, your leader, your father, they were in my youth ministry, and I got to raise them up, and I got to spend time in that. And so, Jeff, thank you so much for, like you said, having longevity, because that's purposeful. That's not accidental. And again, being able to have legacy beyond your immediate, that's huge.
Yeah, man, so many thoughts. I love hearing from a student D. And thank you, Joey. If you look at our society, our culture, America today, you look at the world, people say often, what the number one problem is in our world. And right now it's racism, and another time it's going to be education, and then it's government's fault, and school shootings, and no, it's suicide. It's killing unborn children, whatever, right? We have all these things that float to the top, but people forget, and something I believe, and I put this in my last book also. Actually, it's in the one that I'm writing right now, that I just finished, on sexuality, that comes out the end of the year. Anyway,
come on, man.
I just put this. I have a whole chapter on this in there too, and that's family. Yeah. To me, the number one problem in teenagers is not social media. It's not racism. It's not all this other stuff that we're dealing with. At risk, at harm, blah, blah, blah. That's not the number one problem is the family, because if the family was healthy, we could deal with everything else. Yes. And this goes to what we're talking about today. Listen, we are not just raising a fatherless generation anymore. We are raising a fatherless, motherless, and siblingless generation. The whole family structure is shot. It's disintegrated. Okay, it's disintegrated. And when you do that, then you get what we have today. What do we think was going to happen when families fell apart, right? This is what we get. One of those great quotes that we've seen for decades now is, it's more expensive to fix broken men and women, right? Okay, than it is to raise up children, healthy children. And so I think sometimes this conversation of mentoring, discipling, fathering and mothering gets lost in the fact that we have a major problem. And if we don't go back and get this right, we can't fix everything else. We can't fix all these ancillary issues if we don't get this right now.
Yeah.
So let me real quick. I can do this in like 1 minute, maybe 90 seconds, because you brought it up, Eran, and Joey kind of alluded to this, and that is the stages that we go through. And maybe this can, unless you guys have other thoughts, we can move into that longevity issue. But think about this. When I started, I was their peer. I was 21 years old, dude. Mm-hmm. And my leaders were older than me, right? And everything's a blast. But then I became a big brother or sister. Okay, get that neutrality there. I became a big brother or sister to them if you're in youth ministry and you're a woman. And, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. If we could just put 5 years to these stages, and you'll see where I'm going. I know sometimes it takes 10, sometimes it's quicker. But then I become their brother or sister. Then it's the cool uncle or the cool aunt. Yeah. Right? Then it becomes, I don't know, at 10 years, 12, 15 years, you're the father to them. And what a stage. And man, so many leaders never get there. Right. But then after that, it's that grandfather and that grandmother. And that's dangerous because you can walk into a place and say anything and people go, oh, well, maybe that's true, because they've done it forever and they didn't get out or whatever. And you know how the grandfather and the grandmother is. And so I've been able to walk through each of those stages, with some of those people. Man, I could throw the names out there of students that I've had who had great parents or great homes and support there. Students that I had that did not, because listen, sometimes, I know I'm past 90 seconds probably. Sometimes the best kids do not come from the best homes, and the worst kids do not come from the worst homes. I've seen the worst kids come from the best homes, and the best kids come from the worst homes. So, but it takes a village, I'll end with, man, all those stages and reinventing yourself and the influence, the impact. So many youth pastors stop because they couldn't solve problems when they were friends or when they were, the cool uncle. They never get to this. The most satisfying stage in youth ministry for me is what I'm doing right now. I'm telling you. Yeah. Because I've done a few key things, but I'll end with this statement, and maybe you can just think of this out or write this out or get a tattoo. If you do youth ministry solo, okay, you don't look at the whole group, everybody, the village that does that can add to these kids in their lives. If you do youth ministry solo, then you set your goals solo.
Oh, it's good.
You got to do it. It's the village that raises these kids, man.
Oh, that's so good. It's so good. Diamond, Jeff, all of you, that's always the challenge whenever you have, 4 people sitting. It's like, there's so many good thoughts. You can keep, all of us can keep going. And then, I heard that. But Jeff, you just said something that is kind of firing in my head, a question I wanted to initially ask Joey, but any of you can, feel free to jump in on this as well. You're talking about, we're dealing with a massive issue of fatherlessness and motherlessness, broken families. Many years ago when I was still full-time youth pastoring, it was like a little bit of an epiphany for me. In one moment when I'm preaching, I'm looking out and I'm seeing the faces of kids, and that kid doesn't have a dad, and that kid doesn't have a mom, and that kid has a mom and a dad, but a very dysfunctional family nonetheless. Yeah. And you realize how broken and how hurting the average youth group is.
Add in a sibling too, man. Those of us who have had an older brother or sister who thumped us on the head, man, when you lose that. Yeah.
That makes a huge difference. So Joey, a couple years ago, you and I are sitting there having a conversation about this topic, spiritual fathering, and you said something to me about how the lack of fathers in the city of Chicago is creating a lot of the havoc that we have, the ongoing havoc that we see in that city. And of course, you've ministered there, and you're there in your life. Speak to that briefly. And Diamond, Jeff, feel free to add on to some additional thoughts to what Joey shares here.
I've posted some of these shootings lately, these young people, and I've been praying for Chicago, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll tell you just a small story that highlighted it for me this year. A young lady who I absolutely love in our youth ministry. She walked in right before youth, just regular. And as she walked in, I looked at her and I said, "Hey, happy birthday," because I knew it was her birthday that day. And she's, "Oh, thank you," and it was all nice. And after the service, she came up to me at the altar crying, and I just thought maybe God moved during the service. And she said, "I just want you to know," this is before my daughter was born, but my wife was pregnant. She said, "I just want you to know that I think you're going to be an amazing dad." And she just starts crying like crazy. And I'm like, she goes, "I've waited all day for my biological father to text me or call me to say happy birthday, and he never did. And the first thing that came out of your mouth when I walked in the door was happy birthday." And I just lost it. I just started crying with her. And I think in this city in particular, I look at my youth ministry, and an overwhelming majority of students and my leaders have no father. And when you look at the city, I was just looking at this, and Jeff kind of alluded to it. I don't think this is a coincidence at all, but think about this statement. Father's Day weekend, 104 people were shot in my city, 15 of them fatally, 5 of them children, 1 of them, the youngest, was 3 years old. Okay. This is what happens when the father is removed from the society. And this is just from a practical, like non-biblical, non-Christian, just sociological issues that you're seeing, whether it's, and again, we're seeing a lot of that with the Black Lives Matter movement, whether they're incarcerated for petty things and then just completely taken out of the family ecosystem, or it's a major stuff. But it's no coincidence that when you look at that article, it's a majority of those shootings happen on areas of the city where it's incredibly disproportionate lack of fathers. So again, whether that's, children born out of wedlock, or children born whose father was incarcerated, killed, absent for whatever reason, the bottom line is there are no dads to raise up strong men. There are no dads to raise up confident women. And so they're constantly looking. And that's why I think, especially in the 90s, we had a huge gang issue. And a lot of it was, I'm looking for strong male role models. I'm looking for somebody to be dad. And the guy who's going to do it is the toughest guy on the block, the one who's got the money, who's got the cars, who's got the aspirational aspects. And, you and I were talking a couple summers ago about this. There was this huge RICO case where basically the government came in, rounded up all the heads of the gang, and they were able to prosecute them under one thing. And they thought this is going to help solve the gang issue. So they took all the head leaders of the gangs and they put them all in jail. And what ended up happening is all those gangs lost all their father figures, and they all splintered into various little gangs, and there was infighting, and there was struggle, and there was this huge immaturity. At least, and again, I'm not saying this is good or bad, but at least they would police themselves. If you shot a kid, you were going to get it. If you shot at random people, the gang was going to parent you in that moment. And they took the very little father figure they had, and now you're seeing more and more there's no respect for authority, even among thieves. There's no respect for authority within the household because they never had authority anymore. And so, when you're seeing this aggression, even towards police officers, justly or unjustly, there's no lack of authority because I never had authority. No one ever came in my life and was an authority. And so there's this huge angst towards anybody who wants to tell them how to do anything, because no one has ever told them how to do anything. And so it's hard to be a spiritual father nowadays with today's teenagers, because automatically there's a guard up and there's this thinking, well, how long before you walk up? How long before you fail me? How long before you abandon me? I'm not going to let you hurt me the way every other person who was supposed to be that in my life has hurt me. So you really do have to spend a good amount of time earning and keeping trust, even to become a spiritual parent in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. It speaks to the longevity of youth ministry. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'm reading right now the Chicago Sun-Times article from Father's Day weekend, and it's all about everything we're talking about here. This is good. We've got to address this. One of the things that I'd like to bring up, and maybe we could hit this, what Joey was saying about having the right people in their life or whatever. I want to get practical with that, because I think some people hear this. Yeah, we have to do this. When we talk about in youth ministry, when we say you got to pray more, that's not enough. You got to show teenagers how to pray, or you got to need to worship. listen, sometimes we have to show them how, right? It's the
Yeah.
theoretical and practical. I want to throw out these things, and honestly, I'll do it. I'm just going to list them, and maybe you could bring some of these out. I'd like to know, Dee, from your perspective. I know you're not necessarily a student now, but you're the youngest here. I'd like to see if maybe one of these things hits you. But here's what I would say to those who are wanting to know: what are the processes on how to mentor?
This is great.
Coaching. What are the process? What do I do? So number one, you need a personal mission statement so that you mentor within your strength. I don't mentor business people. I don't mentor missionaries. I mentor youth ministry people, and I stay in my lane, bro. You know what I mean? Now, I can speak to those other things, and we get into those discussions, but write a personal mission statement. What are you professional at, and what can you best coach at? Number two, communicate the entire process. What is it going to look like? How many times are we going to meet? Right? Where's it going to be at? You bring what I say to many of the people that I mentor, you bring the content and I'm going to talk. I'm not going to set this up, right? It leads me to number three. You chase me, I'm not chasing you, right? Then you'll know whether they really want this or not. And this is at the personal mentoring level, right? This is not just people we want to go after, people we want to minister to. But the protege should be chasing, should be chasing me.
Yeah.
And there's things you can. I have things underneath that, but anyway. And number four, know when to finish, because I think sometimes we just kind of keep these things going, and it's not very pointed. It's not intentional, and so we just get together and talk. Listen, I get that. Sometimes we need to do that. But I don't want to take my 30 minutes, this is all part of having an effective meeting. I don't want to take my 30 minutes I don't do hour talks where we just get together and chat. That's okay, but that's not what I do. Okay. I want to know when I'm finished, because I know what my goals are, and I've written them down, and we know what we're going to do in these meetings, because I want to conquer issues. I don't want to talk about issues. I want to solve issues, not bring issues up as a mentor, right? And then finally, that last area, just creativity in the meeting, not always meeting in the office, not always meeting, at a coffee shop. I know this generation loves to meet at the coffee shop and talk. I can't drill you at Starbucks. Somebody hear that? I didn't come here just to talk to you. I came here to make you cry, right?
Yeah.
So, because that's
good.
30-minute meetings, shake the meetings up, make sure they're private. Once in a while, you can go public with them. Ask another mentor to step into a meeting once in a while to bring a heavy, like I can tell you this, the people that I've mentored will tell you they were scared spitless sometimes in the meetings, but that's why they came back. They didn't come back to chat. They came back because they knew, man, the stories are going through my head right now, that I was going to correct something.
It's so good.
All of us need someone in our life that we're afraid of spiritually. If we don't have someone in our life that we are afraid of spiritually, we're not growing.
Yeah. And that's almost a direct repudiation of the youth ministry model of younger youth pastor,
right,
more relevant, more cool. I can connect with kids, all that stuff. Now, again, that's easy for me to say because I'm one of the older guys on the call, right? So I'm soapboxing in that moment. But Diamond, you speak to that, right? Because you've seen both sides of it. You've been in youth ministry full time. You've been raised in a good, solid, healthy youth ministry. But I'm sure you've also seen the temptation at times, whether it's yourself or whether it's others, where it's do I want to be that person that others will fear because of the level of spirituality that I'm going to, disciple at? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I want to provide maybe some context if you're watching and you're like, in terms of my skin in the game in this conversation, for those of you that don't know, I am an orphan. I was orphaned at the age of 3 and adopted by my grandparents who both died of cancer. So I'm a double orphan. I am the product of so many spiritual mothers and fathers who recognize that if my parents were living, that, or if they were involved in my life. My dad is alive, actually, my biological father. But when you told that story, Joey, about the girl who came up to you and was so grateful that you actually said happy birthday to her, I felt that so deep, because I have not heard from my dad on my birthday in 4 years. There are still very much people out there who are in ministry, or maybe not in ministry, but seem to have maybe a sewed together life, that are missing the spiritual fathers and the spiritual mothers that will just invite themselves. So like, Jeff, I love what you're saying about, if you want mentorship, you need to go after the mentor. But I'm so glad that somewhere along the way, there were people like you, Jeff, people like you, Eran, who were like, just, and Eran still does this every year, because I don't celebrate holidays because of how difficult my family situation is. And he still invites me to Christmas every single year. And
I have tried so hard, Jeff. That's going to happen one day. Jeff, one day when Diamond is at my house for Christmas, we're going to send a picture. I'm going to send it to you. Yeah, I'm going to call you. We're FaceTime you. Yeah.
But I mean, there's still like real, like, I mean, I'm okay, but like, there's still very real things that I deal with on a daily basis that block me from having a natural emotional response, or being able to be present in certain moments, because I don't have family. And what God did for me was he sent a lot of spiritual fathers specifically to, I think about people from my home church who just literally invited themselves into my life. Like, whether I liked it or not, I was coming over for dinner. Whether I liked it or not, they were popping up to the Starbucks that I was working at just to check on me. Whether I liked it or not, they were texting me. And I had a spiritual mother from my church last week cash at me $20 to go get coffee, because she knows that socially there's a lot going on right now, and I'm having a lot of conversations that are beautiful, but they are costing me a lot emotionally. I say all that to set the table for why this conversation means so much to me, because I am the product of a youth pastor who, I think about Don Champion, who, yeah, is he young? Is he hip? Can he throw a great event? Absolutely. But ultimately, his goal in raising up students out of our student ministry was making sure that they knew that there was somebody who was going to check them if they were acting out of control. And he made sure that he knew that we were students that could bring our friends to student ministry. So he created an environment that was welcoming. But his reason for doing that, hear me, it was not so that we had more numbers. It was to create spiritual accountability in our friend circles. Because if my friends feel comfortable going to my church, then they know I go to church. And if they know I go to church, we will naturally cuss less. We will naturally underage drink less. We will naturally do less drugs. We will naturally tell less dirty jokes around each other, because we just went to church together the other night. That was Don's thinking. Did we know that as kids? No, we thought he was trying to be a hip, cool youth pastor. But 15 years later, is everybody from the graduating class of 2010 to 2009 and 2008 loving the Lord and in student ministry? Yes, all of us, every single one, single one. That to me is, and so much of it is like, you're not going to be able to look at the strategy of the youth pastor and tell whether or not he or she has a spiritual parenthood proclivity. But it's in your heart. It's in your spirit, youth pastor. If you are doing this because you want to see the students in your student ministry grow up to be spiritual giants, to be the priests of their homes, to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the workplace, to demonstrate the love of Jesus and to demonstrate the gospel wherever they go, that will inform your events and your social media planning and all of the strategies that you use to make the student ministry a place where kids like to come. But if you're doing it just to do it, then as soon as your kids graduate, they're going to get to freshman year at State College and lose their minds.
Yep. So good.
They're going to lose it.
So we got a couple minutes left, and I want to throw one more question on the screen here. And Jeff and Joey, I'd love for the two of you to tackle this because, Joey, you're full-time youth pastor right now, and Jeff, you and I run in the same lane. You're training and coaching youth pastors and, and all of that. But I'd love for you to speak to this, Jeff. One of the things I was so passionate about as a youth pastor was not only being a spiritual father and my wife being a spiritual mother, but we wanted to train our small group leaders in particular to take on that same mantle. So what does that look like? Here's specifically the question: how are you training your leaders to become spiritual fathers and mothers in the lives of their students? Jeff, I'll let you go first, and then Joey, I'll let you answer the same question as well.
Yeah, critical to a holistic, healthy youth ministry is leadership development.
Yeah. And
that begins with having regular meetings, leadership meetings. I know today it's not popular. Okay, I'm going to say it. It is even rare that youth ministries have monthly meetings.
Yeah.
I mean it.
Yeah, I know.
I ask this question every week, every week. Okay, every month, several times a month. Okay, when I'm doing youth pastor things and I'm sitting with youth leaders, and usually it's quarterly or it's every other month. That's the popular. And man, this is a whole nother discussion, but I think if you create effective, intentional meetings, you can't meet enough. For 19 years as a local youth pastor, we met every week as youth leaders. And it wasn't a pre-service meeting. It was on a Monday night. All my meetings for 19 years were on Monday nights with my youth leaders. And they started, 5:30, 6 o'clock with meal together, and they rolled in, and we were done at 8 o'clock. And, sometimes it was at the church, sometimes it was at the mall, sometimes it was at the airport. Most of the times it was at our house. And in that format is where this happened. And I know what people are thinking, man. I get it every time I bring this up. Well, we're too busy today, and no one's interested in that. The family's already separated and whatever. Listen, people make time for what is a priority for them. Right. And if I did this today, I told you earlier, if I did youth ministry again today, I'd have these meetings because they're already running to small groups and they're running to ball games and running everything else. If you make effective meetings, they won't miss it. Halfway through it, 11 years into it, I remember wanting to change it to monthly or bi-weekly. And my leaders didn't want to do that. They're like, no, man, are you kidding? Yeah. And so just creating effective meetings. And what we did is we would bring in people to deal with this. I would show them one-on-one how to disciple a kid. I would show them, we would do role plays on how to lead a kid to Christ or how to lead them in the Holy Spirit baptism or how to pray with a kid for healing. We would literally show them how to walk onto your campus. If you're going to, I know not every one of my volunteer leaders can go onto campus, but I wanted to show them, I know, man, we're running out of time. I see the clock and it's rolling. So I think effective youth leader, I think you can model it yourself in your key leaders around you, and then they get comfortable with it, and then they take it. Healthy leaders attract healthy leaders. Yeah. And healthy leaders disciple, unhealthy people. So I think the leadership meeting is critical to show them how, because they're not doing it because they don't want to. They're doing it because they don't know how to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's so true.
I agree. And we've stuck to our meetings. We haven't deviated from that. I've made a big focus on leadership development. It's always been a part of my heart because I know if I can train them up right, then they'll train the kids up right. So my main focus, I spend more time with leaders than I do with students. But I would add this caveat, and I mentioned earlier about my desire to be a spiritual grandfather. Having my 6-month-old daughter, I wasn't sure. We live in a 2-flat, so my parents live on the second floor. We live on the first floor. I wasn't sure what kind of grandparents they would be with my kid. I seen the way they were with my niece and nephew. But you have different types of grandparents. You have the grandma who's a little overbearing, or sometimes the in-law who will tell you, no, you got to feed them like this, you got to do that, and they're almost all over you. And my mom's done a great job of doing a few things. If you need me, I'm there. So with my leaders, they know, hey, there are certain things that are over your pay grade. Come to me for it. If a kid is telling you they're being abused, they're being hurt, come to me. I'll deal with some of those major things. But the day-to-day stuff, talking about their softball game and how they lost, you can handle that. And then not overstepping your bounds. And so I think sometimes we cut the legs of our leaders because we take the place and we do it. And we got to be center and we got to be the main one because we know we can do it better. And that's probably true. That's why you're the main leader, because you can do it better. But that doesn't mean you can do more. And so when you let them do the job and you give them the freedom to step into the calling that God has placed on them, and you just make yourself available for whenever they need you, I'm here. And trust me, I have called my mom over and over again. Mom, what do you do this? What's a good this? How do you do that? I call my sisters who have kids. hey, what's a good brand of baby food, or how do you handle is this normal? Is she supposed to make that noise? I don't know if she's supposed to make that noise. And they're great resources to help me father my child. And so if you're going to raise spiritual fathers and mothers as a spiritual grandparent, and I think that's what the pastor's doing with the leadership, is you have to give them room to figure it out. They're going to make some mistakes. They're going to, do some things. Again, you want to get enough boundaries in them that they're not, hurting the child. And I think if my mom ever felt that I was hurting my child, she would step in and call me out real quick. But at the same time, understand that they're going to parent maybe a little bit different than you. Jeff's style might be a little bit different than my style. That might be a little bit different than Diamond's style. Where we're from, our experiences, current things, all that's going to affect it. And so, the main thing is always going to be the main thing. You always got to keep the child alive, right? We always got some functional main things. Right. But there are some other things where it's like, listen, my dad, the belt was there and he knew how to use it. I don't know if that's going to happen with my daughter, but my daughter's still going to be disciplined. You know what I mean? And so I think the same thing goes on with youth ministry. Hey, this person, they might do TikTok videos with their leader. I ain't doing no TikTok videos, all right? I'm not trying to be hip and cool. I know who I am. I understand who I am. You're not going to see me on a TikTok video with a junior hire. But I'll support them. I'll love them.
But we would love to, just to be honest, Joey.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm a TikTok addict, so I'll do a TikTok video with you.
But yeah, I would say, set your leaders up for success by not cutting their legs out and letting them figure out how to parent the same way somebody let you figure it out.
And let me add one thought, because everything's real progressive here. Jeff, you're emphasizing the importance of regular leadership development meetings, and Joey, you're emphasizing that as youth pastors, we have to allow the leaders around us to lead, and given their own uniqueness in the way they're going to lead. So I'll just throw one more thought into the mix for you guys, for every youth pastor watching right now. Don't be afraid of using the verbiage spiritual father and spiritual mother. Yeah. Allow the weight of that verbiage to land squarely on the shoulders of your small group leaders, or the leaders that you are positioning in maximum relational influence type roles, right? And I know that very kind of systematically speaking now, or very strategically speaking, not every leader that served in our youth ministry, Juliana's youth ministry, not every leader was capable or ready to be a spiritual father or mother, but we still find ways for them to serve. But the ones that were, not always very publicly, but all the time privately, we talked about spiritual fathering and spiritual mothering, and we pulled biblical context out to give to them, and we trained to that regard, and we taught and developed to that regard. We were always saying to them, this is the goal. We want you to be a spiritual mom and spiritual dad. Everything that all of you have talked and shared about the value of having or the devastation of not having were things that we would talk about with our leaders on a regular basis, because I wanted them to understand that was the goal of being a small group leader, the ultimate goal. Yes, I want you to have fun. Yes, I want you to build relationships. Yes, I want you to be able to facilitate a great conversation in your small group. That's all important, and we'll train you in all those things. But this right here, this is the ultimate. This is what we're really headed towards.
Hey, Aaron, and real quick, just with that, it's like what Jeff was saying earlier in the beginning. Sometimes you start as a big brother. Some of these leaders, we're training them to be the oldest sibling. And if you're the oldest sibling, or if you know the oldest sibling, they have a different weight from all the other siblings, because they understand, they've been told since they were young, look out for your little brother, watch out for your sister, make sure they're okay. There's this extra thing. I think student leaders, and even the student leaders, or the leaders that we're developing, they might just be the big brother. It's like you're like 2 chapters ahead of the rest of the kids, but you're still 2 chapters ahead, and there's a responsibility with that. And knowing where they're at on that journey, whether it's big brother, uncle, parent, grandparent, I think is your responsibility to foster and care through.
That's so good.
It's so good.
This has been a great conversation, and I just want to thank you all for being a part. Jeff, thanks for coming on and being a guest this week, and being a part last week as well. And Joey, thanks for 2 weeks in a row now. Diamond, I don't know if you noticed, but Peter jumped on and was watching a couple minutes ago. I don't know if he's still watching, but
he's
Peter,
jealous.
He's jealous. He knows he's going to lose his job. That's what's going to, he's so... Hope you enjoy that camp, Peter, because anyways, listen, Jeff, we're gonna post once again in the comments your website for youthology, for youth pastors or for lead pastors that are watching right now that say, hey, I'd love to, connect with Jeff and, bring you on as a coach or get just some more wisdom from you. So I just encourage all of you, check out what Jeff's doing, some incredible things. And thank you for being a part today. If you are enjoying LTG Live, a couple ways you can stay connected with us. Go to the Lead the Generation Facebook page, give us a like, give us a share. If you're catching this in Apple, iTunes, podcast land, give us a subscribe, give us a rating. All of those things kind of help us to stay connected with you, as well as spread the word about what we're doing here today. We'll be back again next Thursday, same time. More great guests, more great topics when it comes to developing yourself as a leader in youth ministry. We do our best to talk about the issues that we know are most important for youth pastors. Pastor Joey, thanks for being with us, and tell our friends in Chicago and Illinois district we said hello. Jeff, love you, brother. Great to connect with you. Thanks for being with us, praying for you, and city of Minneapolis, and cheering you on, North Central.
I got a text from Julius, a kid in Joey's youth ministry who's at North Central now. So we're both kind of speaking into this young life.
That's awesome.
Love it. Diamond, thank you for co-hosting today. You've been a part of previous LTG lives, and I know you're going to be a part of more in the future. And you let me know when you're starting to raise money for your church plant. I want to be one of the first people to send you a check. So we love you. My wife and I love you dearly. And so thanks for being a part, everybody. Thanks for being a part of LTG Live today. We will see you all next week. God bless.